Okay. All right. Whippa!
Whippa!
Hello, welcome everybody. This is Jesse Neuman, director of Musicworks, and we are doing session number 304 in our Real Music Talk series. We have the amazing, wonderful, talented, personal favorite of sarcastic exchanges and social situations, Miss Elizabeth Pupo-Walker. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm so happy to be here on this rainy day.
Yeah. I threw up on the screen here the cover from your website because I think that basically encapsulates everything that we need to know and all of the questions we want to ask about what it is you do. So for everyone at home there, tell us, what are we looking at, and what is this? What is happening? Who are you and what do you do?
Well, let me tell you about this photo here. This was from a session I did for Netflix for a show that lasted a couple of seasons. It was called The Get Down.
Okay.
And it was actually about the Bronx hip hop origins. And I was there creating the score for the show. And it was a really cool show. It was very, very expensive and it didn't last. But so I had over there, you see up on the left, that's called a hand sonic. That's an electronic drum machine. I have a log drum next to it, djembe, congas, and then you see all my charts and small instruments. So I do studio work. That is part of my income and what I love to do. Sometimes I get very high paying work, which this was. Sometimes I work for HBO, depends. And then sometimes I have really great musician friends that I play with who don't really have a budget. They're trying to get their project off the ground, and I work for very little because I love them and I want to support them. So I do music that I love, and then sometimes I do music that I like. But I don't do music that really bothers me. Like that's a big thing for me, is if you ever feel like as a musician that you're selling yourself out and doing something that you just don't feel good about, maybe do something else in addition to the music you love. But that's just me. But I also teach students, and I love the balance of performing and teaching students. It's really important to me to have both. And it works really well for me here in New York, because New York is just full of work. And I know a lot of musicians who won't come here because they don't feel like they're ready. And it is a plethora of work to choose from. Multimedia, working with dance companies, theater, musicians, world musicians, it's endless. So for me, I'm a versatile player. I think that helps me a lot. Say, for instance, a singer-songwriter might have a much harder time in New York because they have their one thing that they do. But I love all kinds of music. And so that gives me a lot of freedom to work in a lot of different genres.
And I can personally attest to that because we've taught and performed together many times, and I've seen you go from one end to the other like that. I wonder if that's sort of that flexibility, is that a skill that you've always had as a person, as a student, or is it something you needed to develop as you became a professional musician and as you focused more on percussion? Has flipping back and forth and adjusting always been easy for you?
Yes, I'm a very adaptable person, just in general. Like I love to move within different types of people. Like I was that way in high school. I had all different kinds of friends in high school. And I'm sort of that way about music too. But one thing I would suggest, though, even though I work in a lot of different styles, I think it's really important to choose something that you really love. For instance, when I first started playing music, I was playing all different kinds of drums. And I thought, you know what, I need to get really good at one particular drum and learn as much and go as deeply as I can with it. Dig, which I'm still doing.
Right.
So I chose congas, and I was like, okay, I need to go where this began. I wanted to get into the origins of it. I went to Cuba. I studied. It's hard work sometimes because you keep breaking through and becoming a better musician, and then you get to even more challenging stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to keep breaking through. You can't, there's a tendency to sometimes think, wow, this is harder than I thought, but
Right.
you just got to keep breaking through, because
It
then you
turns
look
out
back at,
it turns out that life is harder than we thought it would be.
yeah, even
So
the things
disappointing. Yeah.
the things you love to do are
Right.
sometimes hard, and that's okay. And then you look back and you go, oh my God, I remember I just like gave myself such a hard time on that one. And now I look back on it, I was like, that's so easy now,
Right. Well, it's
but
really
then,
good. It's really good to hear you say that, because I think that especially younger students have a tendency to look at anyone who's at a level above them and think like, oh, well, they got there, so like, yeah, easy for them to say, like, because they're there and they've got it and they understand it. And it's really nice to hear someone who's in the middle of a thriving career like yourself say, yes, I am here, I've moved up past all these levels, and yet I am still continuing to work on
oh
my
yeah.
stuff. It's not like, oh, one day you wake up and you're established and
Well, that's the thing, is I get bored really easily with things, and
yeah.
this never bores me. There's always a barrier to break. There's always like, ooh, to get over that next hurdle. There's always
Right.
so much to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, could you, I'm going to put you on the spot, but do you think you could give us like a concrete example, even a small thing about maybe a band you've been playing in recently, or a session you did, or a time when you were studying where there was some element that you were stuck on, and then how you were able to get past it, or how did you know that you'd moved up a rung and were now ready for the next challenge?
Interesting.
If I had a cup of coffee, I would drink it slowly now to give you time to think about it. But I
Well,
don't have my coffee.
I'm just gonna go with the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay.
Is and it may not necessarily be the best example, but it's the first thing that came to my mind. So it's probably really meaningful. I play with this band, Michael Lenhart Orchestra,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just top notch. There's players from the high echelons of the New York music scene that play in that band. And Michael is very interested in very little rehearsal time. He likes that sort of fly by your seat of your pants vibe when we perform on stage, and it's sometimes a 19-piece band. And he
So
conducts.
does he send out the music and be like, look at this, be ready, let's just hit it on stage?
We usually have one rehearsal, but
Okay.
sometimes he sends the charts the day before the rehearsal.
Oh, so it's
It
really
depends.
like, yeah.
It
Cool.
depends on where he's at in his life. Sometimes
Mhm.
he's touring with Steely Dan, and he puts charts up the day before, or sometimes a week before.
Oh, poor
Anyways,
me. I'm so busy touring with Steely Dan, and I have time to
right.
rehearse my band. I'm just kidding,
But,
Michael. I'm just
but,
kidding.
but then
I think I actually met him one time. He's a super nice guy.
really wonderful to
Yeah.
work with.
Yeah.
He's just incredible. I can't say enough great things about him. So for me, I found music at 23. Okay. That's late. That's late for most people's standard ideas of like, really, you started that late and you have a career in music.
I just turned
But
23 last week. I just turned 23.
Jesse, you look good for your age. So I'm glad I found it. I was doing well in life. I was successful with my degree from college and but it turns out nothing really ever made much sense to me. I didn't realize that until I found music. And then I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And then all doors swung wide open and never have stopped. It just flows. But that being said, I have a very positive attitude. So I bet you there was a lot of stuff that went down that maybe some people might consider really difficult. I thought childbirth was wonderful. So I think I have a positive attitude. Anyway. So anyway, getting back to that, Michael Lenhart, he, sometimes will send really, really difficult charts like right before the show. And sometimes I have tons on my plate and I can't really get to know them super well. And and he'll do things on stage that are very improvised. Instead of going on the chart form, you have to return. So a lot of times I'm hired to interpret music. That's kind of what people like about me, is that I have a musical sense of like just really doing my own thing. That most of the time people don't tell me what to play. Mm-hmm. They trust that I'm going to bring something to the table. So I had to become a really good chart reader
Mm-hmm.
and watch him at the same time and see that he's going to switch off.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm a very intuitive player, so to suddenly become much more visual, um, on two different levels, on
Mm-hmm.
following this chart and seeing that he's going to open it up at any point, um, was something. And working with all these amazing players who've been doing that all their life,
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Yeah.
whoo. So that is something that I'm so thankful for. It's really helped me grow as a musician.
Right.
And somehow, like, I feel like I'm getting away with it. Like, nobody knows that that's been that's been
Now they're all
something that
gonna
I've
know. They're all gonna
challenged
know
by.
now. Well, it's a great example, and it totally resonates with me. When I started getting to jazz in high school, I did a lot of improvising by ear, and so, which is a great skill, but I sort of started to get into this thing where I was like, I don't need to look at the music, I don't need to look at the chords, like I'll just do it by ear. And then eventually that sort of catches up to you, because like there is this combination of like the technical elements and the practical reality, and also,
Mm,
like the high art or whatever. So like when you say you're a very intuitive player, like, I was doing the same thing. I was intuiting and using my ears. But then you get to a session where it's like maybe there's a song you haven't learned, or it's complicated, or someone's made some changes to it. And then
mm-hmm.
you need to be able to look at that material and
To
respond to it.
refer. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's, you could have you could have looked at that situation and been like, well, I'm intuitive, I do my thing, and I know I'm good, but I can't do this. I can't read and follow the conducting and do that. And that could have been like a real stopping point for you. And instead, it sounds like your attitude was, well, I want to be in this band, so I better learn how to keep up. And you did, and
Mm-hmm.
opened
Mm-hmm.
up to that. And I think that's something also that, like, students sometimes get that twisted around. They see it as either like a roadblock for them, like a stop sign, or they see
Right.
it as like, oh man, like I don't want to be tied down by that technique. Like I want to just express myself. And I don't sounding like sarcastic. I don't mean it. I don't think I've never met a student that said it that way, but like there's this feeling of like, well, that stuff is, I don't need that stuff because I'm going to just do me. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the better way to look at it, or the more accurate way, is that if I can learn how to do that stuff, then I can be me in one more situation. Like if someone
Right.
throws this really complicated piece of music at you and you're like, yeah, I can sit down and figure that out, and then I can go be me and play everything I want to play and still be involved in what I see in front of me. Then I've now taken my game and stepped it up a level,
Right.
um, and like you said, like all of those players, like I've seen some of the players in that band, like they're all, they all do that. Like they can, they can
They
make
can
it
do
happen.
anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
coming
It's
from the
true.
intuitive place is a really good place to come from too, because it's equally hard to go the opposite way. If you're so used to just like, I'm going to just
Reading
read
charts.
this, I'm going to do it perfectly, and I'm not going to mess up. And then someone asks you to step out a little bit, then like I've seen people get that like deer in headlights kind of look, like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to just do it the way it is, So
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
anyway.
But that's something that I agree with everything you just said there. That's something that I try to initiate off the bat with my students, like first day of class. I
Mhm.
really think it's important that, I mean, there's many many ways people go about creating and learning music, and that's what's the beauty of it. But I like for students to recognize initially, before I ever teach a rhythm or before I ever even teach much about technique, I want them to explore their sound. You know,
Mhm.
just in the way that we speak and move our body language, that's similar to how you're going to approach a drum. And on
Mhm.
the first day, I learn a lot about students based on how they play. I learn who leaders
That's
are.
cool.
I learn who team players are. I learn, and I'm not always right. Sometimes
Mhm.
people are putting an image out, and then I find
Mhm.
out later that they're actually something else. But I learn a lot about the way students approach instruments. I notice who the improvisers are. I notice who is playing the bass over and over and leaving a lot of space.
Mhm.
And that's what makes a great band, is when certain people are great at certain things. And that doesn't mean they won't grow in other areas. This is kind of what we've been talking about. But
Mhm.
I find that sometimes I've had conversations with musicians about this. If their first experience with music is walking into a classroom and being told what to play, this is how you do it. This is, read this, learn this note. You know, all those things can be somewhat intimidating.
Sure.
But and they're very important. I'm not saying they're not important, but I do like for students to just, their initial moment with music should be their just initial self-expression. What is coming out? I almost feel like I still sound like I do the first time I ever played the bongos. Like, I mean, I've learned a tremendous amount, but
Right.
my groove was there.
The spirit and that intuitive part
Yes.
remains intact. Yeah,
Came
that's
out.
a great point.
I'll never forget the way it felt and the way it sounded. And I still feel like when I'm grooving with a band, I still feel like I sound like I did that first day.
Yeah.
You know, and you just don't want people to get in your head and say, well, you know, you need to learn this before you do anything on your own. You know?
I hear you. I hear you. I want to play a little video of you playing because it's making me excited to hear some music. Let me play this, and then afterwards, tell me what's going on there. Let's see. Nice. All right.
Nice. That was like a freeze frame on my end. Was it flowing for you?
It was flowing for me. Yeah.
Okay, good. As long as the
was.
students see the flow, because I want them to be able to see all the movement and everything.
You know what? Let's make sure that it is. Hold on. I'm going to close this up. I'm going to play it one more time. I want to make sure that's a good.
Oh, are you going to edit this? This isn't just like.
No, this is going out. I'm not editing anything. I'm just going out live.
Okay, so you're just
live
doing
to the
this.
world. Live to the world.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I mean, I'll bleep out all your curse words.
I just mean if you're fixing all this in real time. Okay, cool.
Let's see this. Let's do it one more time just to make sure that it went through. Can you see that?
It's freeze framing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I've got it on my screen.
Okay, maybe it's just my computer.
Such a great video.
So anyway, cool. I love this. I had so much fun. This was in France.
Anytime you can end with jazz flute, I think you're in a good space. I know. I can't.
Did you see how fast he had to go hustle to his flute? Because I called the ending. He's like basically ran and got his flute.
Oh, so he was like conducting with the maraca.
He was so into it. Yeah, there's no set amount of measures. It's just when I make the call, you know.
So tell me about. I know we have an audio clip that we're going to talk about. We're going to listen to. Hold on one second. Stop. Too good. I'm going to stop that because I'm not ready for it yet. Tell me about, so I know you want to talk about that part and how we got there, but tell me about that video that we just saw, if I can find it, which I can't.
That was in France, in Rennes, France, which is about 45 minutes outside of Paris.
Okay.
And they've been putting on these amazing music festivals for many, many years. And the curator is just like a huge music enthusiast. And he often finds new music that he really loves and presents it. And everybody trusts him. It's kind of like the way people trust the venue Barbez here in New York. Because you can go any night and it's just going to be great because they know how to put great music. That festival is like that. So even though people haven't heard of a lot of the acts, they come in droves. And Kuchimea, the leader of this band, is quite well known. He was in the Dap Kings, Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. He's played with a lot of famous artists. But this project, this was our album that we put out, and we were coming out to France to play this festival, and it was just a super duper blast, and they run the festival so well. They
Tell me,
really,
tell me a
yeah.
little bit about this band, like how it got together, how you got involved. What's the general vibe? What's the tell us for someone who doesn't know anything about this band, like
Hmm.
like me. Tell us about this band. I got another photo here. This looks like a recording session you guys did.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the second record we've been working on.
okay,
it's
so
actually
tell
it's
us
actually
about
on.
Kochumea.
Yeah, Kochumea, as I said, he was a saxophone player in Sharon Jones and the Daft Kings, but before that, he was in Robert Walters' Great Boy All Stars, and he's played with so many great
Oh.
musicians. And he and I played together in basically other bands. Like we would end up being asked on stage, and a couple times we ended up playing together on stage, and we just vibed well. And then we both ended up in New York, and he had me come play on his first record that he had called Johnny Arrow. And then we just started playing in different musical settings, and we just stayed connected. And then when he started Kochumea, which is his name, the
Mm-hmm.
he, we all play with him with that title for the band, and he just has had me right there with him through everything. And it's a very percussion heavy band, just
Mm-hmm.
lots and lots of percussion. Keys you'll see down at the bottom there.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Roth, this guy talking to Kochumea. Kochumea is in the black hat. Gabe
Mm-hmm.
Roth is a kind of, I consider, a genius producer, arranger, engineer, all around amazing human bass
Mm-hmm.
player. So anyway, he did all that with this record. So
Mm-hmm.
we just went to his studio, Gabe's studio in California, and recorded. And one thing I just want to say that was a really great process is we wrote a lot while we were there. Kochumea came in with themes of songs and melodies and a lot of great concepts, but
Mm-hmm.
we did a lot of the arranging there. And so we'd start a song, and it's almost like the life cycle. You start a song and you're walking around and you're trying new things and you're shaking rattles and you're looking for sounds you like, and you're thinking about the melody he had come up with. And then everybody gets their ideas, and then starts the hard work, which is kind of like going to school, right? You start
Right.
out babies, you go to school, you got your critical thinking. You
Right.
got to put up with failures. You got to put up with where your ideas might not be accepted, and you got to detach, and you got to keep going, and then just work as a team and keep your emotions reined in terms of feeling insecure, and you just keep working. And then you figure out what the song is, you've got it arranged, and you sit on it. And we would just play it over and over and over and over until we got our groove, until it was sinking in deeply. And then we would record. And so the sinking in deeply, that's the wisdom, that's the professionalism, that's the inspiration, that's the heart and soul. So it's kind of like that. You do all your work, and then you can get to this place where you really can express yourself. So
So
that,
it's
and then
not.
we would do that over and over for each song. We'd go back to the baby.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah. Again, it's like it's. I think there's this notion that, like, and we've gotten from TV also, where you walk into a recording studio and everything's been set up perfectly for you, and you put your headphones on and you sing your part, and then there's this like 3-minute montage of like you scribbling things and coffee cups and whatever, and then after 3 minutes, like it's this beautiful, beautiful child, and it's and
Right, right.
that's not always realistic. In fact, it's often the opposite. It's often like a lot of going over and sitting on it and going through
Yeah,
those awkward stages. um
yeah. Hmm.
I would imagine too that part of, like I'm sure you've heard this adage, like when you're a musician, you play with the people you want to hang out with. You
Yeah,
hire
yeah.
your friends, and that doesn't mean like you hire your friends because they're your friends. It means there are so many good musicians, you hire the people that you want to collaborate with. So I
Hmm.
imagine that, if you're in a situation where everybody's in this room, it's costing however many $100 an hour or whatever it is, that like if you're with people who are tense and who are not team players and who are frustrated by every little thing or just want to do their one little solo, like those are people that you don't hang around very much.
Mm.
What's the vibe like with this group of this group of people? Is it mostly the core band? Do members change a lot, or what's the feeling like in this band?
Well,
Like when what's your feeling like when you're in the studio talking or hanging out or rehearsing or traveling or any of that kind of stuff?
Right. Well, there's kind of a core band, but then everybody that Chemi is his nickname, Chemi pulls in are very in-demand musicians. They work in many different facets. So you can't always get, keep a one crew band,
Sure.
But everybody loves playing with this band, and it's kind of exciting that the people interchange. It's cool to work with a lot of different people, but Coach Man's very picky about who he gets involved, and that has to do with, and this is some suggestions for you guys.
Okay.
Make sure that you are not high maintenance in a way that makes the band leader or the people in the group troubled. You know what I mean? Like, be on time. Be proactive. If something's bothering you and it's not something that can be fixed in a nice way, if it's just something you're going to have to live with, don't complain about it. Just find a way to work with it, and stay positive. Keep positive. Anything that you can do, that you can figure out on your own, do. What you don't want to do is come around all the time with questions about, I don't know how to do, what's going on with that? Like, if there's things that you really don't know and you need guidance on, of course, but there's so much to be said for figuring things out yourself in the moment and just listening really hard. Listen all the time. I can't tell you how much I've learned from just listening, rather than just going, oh, I need to say this, or I need to get this out there. So he pulls together people that do all those things. They're on time. They're eating well, because we had long days in the studio. These people don't party hard. These people have great energy from morning to night. These people know their crafts really well. These people are chill, funny, don't take it too seriously, but are yet very, very professional. Like able to joke and hang when it's time for that. But let me tell you, these people work. They work. And working on art. So it's amazing. And nobody goes in after playing a song, and you go back in the studio and listen back. Nobody's going in high-fiving, going, oh man, you rule, man. Everybody's just listening critically and deciding, oh wow, okay, this and that, and you might even rearrange the whole dang song. Nobody's high-fiving. Everybody's listening super hard.
Yeah, no, I'm smiling because everything you're saying is almost like, just go back and rewind and listen to the segment again and again. And this is a really good education, not only for music, but just, not to sound cheesy, but school and life in general, it's true. And
it is.
I know what you mean about the high-fiving thing. It's not saying don't be enthusiastic, don't be happy, but it's there is this tendency, I think, almost out of nervousness, to any time we do something to immediately say oh man, that sucked, I'm so sorry, or to just be oh dude, and it's not, it's kind of it sounds like what you're saying is that being in a project like this, there's sort of a set expectation that everybody knows what they're doing, they're professional, and they have integrity in the process. So no one, it's if nobody high fives you, that doesn't mean you do a good job. It just means that you're doing a good job, and that's what we expected, and we're happy you're doing it, but we're here to work, kind of thing.
Yeah. And we're looking for nuance, and we're looking for groove, and we're looking for, do we really need that percussion part? Isn't that overlapping on that which is already there? And is that breakdown appropriate? Do we want to add an extra measure? Just looking and feeling. The groove is probably the most important thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And not being, and at the same time, or on the opposite hand, not being discouraged and feeling like you're wrong if it isn't correct right away. That's also part of the process. I think so much of the time we want to get it right away. And I know that people will say, all these kids or millennials want everything immediately. Like we all want
Right.
everything immediately. It's not a kid or millennial thing. Like everybody wants things immediately, but the things you get immediately are often not the best things. And so have that maturity of like, we're going to go into the studio having not partied, having eaten well, because we understand we're going to be there all day and that the first take probably won't be the best, and that that's fine because we're here to work and get this done. It's really good, like just process for everything. And I also just want to come back to what you said about not asking questions. And this is, I know this seems counterintuitive for a lot of students because we do say ask questions, and of course ask the right questions. But
Right.
I would say, like, if there's something that you're not sure about, 9 times out of 10, it's better to kind of go for it
And figure it out.
and figure it out. And so the 1 time out of 10 that the band leader stops and is like, actually, that's not working. And then
Right.
you just go, no problem. Let's try it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I have experience with this. It works. I mean, there every now and then you know you're too far out of your realm, and you really need to ask some questions.
right.
But yeah, you got to trust yourself. Sometimes we just think, oh gosh, I'm not sure, but just trust your instincts, you know?
Or also the ego part of it, like thinking like my question about if I should do this or this is the most important thing in the room right now. So I'm going to ask it. It's
as
like,
if everybody's listening to your every tiny little move.
Right. And it's not, but it's not to diminish that decision. It's just to say it's your decision. Like that what you're doing is probably a part of a much bigger whole, and that you can contribute to the vibe and the group and the process by choosing a direction and committing to it and doing it. And in the rare case that it's really not working, someone will stop and tell you that's not working. But more likely than not, it's very rare that I've been in a situation where someone's been like, stop, that's not working. And I'm so mad at you for even thinking that would work. You know, it's like, that never happens. It never happens. It doesn't happen. Like what happens is like, hey man, don't do that. You know, like you might
or usually it's, you know, there's, I like working with people who know how to speak, you know, like Gabe Roth is really good at that. He's like, hey man, why don't we try something different there? You know, like, I mean, there's ways to do it.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Cool. I just have to ask you, so I'm looking at this enormous percussion, this wall of drums and percussion. Like how does everybody decide what they're going to play? And I'm coming at this, like, I know I'm a musician, but in some ways it's just baffling to me. Like, you know, when people say like, oh, you're a drummer, like, how do you explain to them what the difference is between drums and percussion? And how do you then figure out what's happening? Like, it looks almost like a craft table, like there's sandwiches, sodas and stuff out there. How does that, and I know every situation is different. You're like, oh yeah, like grab a Danish, you know. I know every situation is different, but I guess my question I did want to ask you is, what's the difference between being a percussionist and a drummer? And even like, and in any situation, you can use this one or use a different example. How do you figure out like what you're going to be doing and playing and bringing and where and why?
Well, it's kind of like I was saying earlier about, you know, we'd start a song and everybody starts rooting around thinking about, you know, Chemi will play like the melody, or like he'll have like a little recording that he's done digitally of the song with a very basic backbeat or something. And everybody just starts milling around looking for what they think they want to add to the song. And sometimes it's based on, well, the last song I played a lot of congas, so I'm going to go for the Danish table. You know, like I want to mix things up, right?
Yeah.
Now people like Brian Wolf, he's a drum kit player, absolutely phenomenal, and his technique is so good that much better with sticks. I mean, like astoundingly better. I'm not even technically very good with drumsticks.
Yeah.
So he tended to hold down a lot of the stick patterns, you know.
Okay.
Neil and I both play a lot of hand drums. Neil also plays timbales. He's like multi-faceted. So, you know, there were times when we would all play stick patterns. But I, you know, would get, you know, everybody's interlocking, you know, so we're always looking for different timbres, you know, like, you know, we have, as you can see here, we have sort of our soprano, we have the tenor, we have the alto, we have everything.
Mhm.
And sometimes we would pan the room
You're
like,
talking about the ranges of like from high to low. So like we're used
yes,
to hearing soprano, alto, tenor in a choir. You're talking about like soprano
with
being like very high bells and very
shakers,
like,
bells.
and
Yep.
all the way down to the bass, which would be like big bass drums and
Right.
really really heavy hand drums and that kind of stuff. Got it.
Yep. And depending on how we tune the congas, they could be alto or tenor.
Sure.
And we also, every single song, we would change miking because depending on how we interlock the rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
we like everything panned. So all the drums, you see them in this corner, they were never like that every song. Sometimes, if we want the bass to start in your right headphone and the congas to start in your left, we got to be in different sides of the rooms because we're doing this all live.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
there was just a lot of experimentation. And then, Coach Amaya, talking about what he likes. And then Gabe is just so good at walking in and fine tuning things. So, but we all kind of work off of our greatest strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes not. Sometimes it's just fun to play something crazy that we don't normally play.
Right.
So
it's always nice to hear a musician say that. I know a lot of students, when they get to a certain level, get caught up in this sort of competitive aspect of music and music education, which I totally get. It's like there are certain bands, like if you want to be in the all state band or the all whatever band, you're competing at a certain level. If you're looking for a spot at conservatory, a lot of especially classical musicians are auditioning. They may only be one English horn chair in the orchestra, so that's, competition is a part of life, and you're competing, not like you need to win, but there's a certain amount of space and a certain amount of jobs or whatever. But it's always nice to hear, especially from members of the sort of jazz and funk and pop community, that there's a camaraderie and that people want to play to each other's strengths, like that you enjoy being paired up with someone who's strong at sticking patterns, because that frees you up to do your thing, and that together you put that together. And I would
Yep.
imagine, I shouldn't assume this, but I would just like to make sure, I would imagine that you have a lot of percussionist friends that you talk with and trade work with and trade ideas with, and
Sure do. And you know what? Here's something funny. It's sometimes, New York, you got to hustle. There's so many great percussionists. There's so many great, it's like that in any field in New York.
Sure.
And sometimes another percussionist might get a job that you're just like salivating for, that you didn't even have an opportunity for or whatever. And and there's a jealousy that will come up, or an envy.
Sure.
And the best way to handle that feeling is to get on there and support that person. The best way to alleviate those pretty vapid feelings, really. They're not real feelings, really. You're really happy for them. That's a cool thing,
Right.
They're your friend. And so you go on and you support, and you just say, I'm so happy for you. That is so cool that you got that gig. You're going to be awesome. And then it's almost like when you do that, when you make that connection, and then they come back with, oh my God, thank you so much. You've sort of like created closure on those yucky feelings, it's like you've connected with that person. And so like, if we all do that for each other, it's just a much greater place to work in,
Well, and it probably works. It works the other way too. It's like, when Michael comes back from Steely Dan gig, and and it's like he doesn't want to be the guy that comes back and everyone's like, all right, whatever, Mr. Play in front of a million people, like, what I mean? Like, he doesn't like nobody wants.
He never brings it up, probably because some people,
That's
I wish he would.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is like nobody wants to be that guy that comes back and is like, feeling the vibe of like, oh, people are upset and annoyed and jealous with me. It's like, it's not my fault. I got a good gig. Like, I got a good gig because I'm a good musician and I got lucky. It's a combination of those things. But you're absolutely right. It's like when you bridge that distance, like then you create a closure of that. You close up that tendency to go to the yucky.
Yeah.
And that's a technical term.
And it's hard in New York, everybody's, sometimes it's not. Sometimes New York is just like firing on all cylinders, and sometimes it's not. That's the way it is when you're an independent musician. So
well, and just and I think it also in life in general, like it's okay, like that's a natural feeling to be frustrated, to feel bad, that when you see things that you want and that other people are getting them, it's okay to have those feelings. And
Yes.
then also realize that it's not that person that made you have those feelings. It's like that
Right.
person got the gig and you're happy for them and you feel a little bad that you didn't get it, and you can sit with that and then move on when you're ready to move on, but it's, it's separating the difference between the game and like the reality of, your life.
You're creating a cyclical pattern. When you support others, they're gonna come out and support you guys, everybody, all of us. If that's happening to them, they're gonna do the same, hopefully.
I wanted to play another video. I don't know if, hopefully you'll be able to see this, but if not, we'll talk about it afterwards. So speaking of being up for different gigs and things like that, let's take a quick look at this.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Pupo-Walker, and I'm a percussionist based out of New York City. I work a lot with the Daptone label with various artists, both live performances and studio work. Play a lot of soul, funk, Latin jazz, soul jazz. I studied in Havana, Cuba, and also in Matanzas with Los Muñequitos de Matanzas. I was very interested in the study of Afro-Cuban percussion, primarily folkloric rumba. But I also lived in Seattle for 10 years and used to play regularly with Reggie Watts. He was a huge influence, as were many of the players that I got to play with in Seattle. So I feel very fortunate to have the career that I do.
All right, so that, of course. Oh, I don't want to interrupt your groove. Don't stop on my count. That was this sessions you did for Splice. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. Splice is a company that is probably thriving right now as we speak through this coronavirus situation.
Right.
Because what they do is they bring in live music.
Splice, you're so lucky you got coronavirus. I'm just kidding. On the heels of our previous segment, those guys are so lucky that we got a pandemic.
All right, so I'm sure they're not happy for musicians at all. Anyway, so what they do is they bring in musicians, and depending on the instrument, they sort of have an idea of what they'd like. Maybe it's a genre. Like for me, they say, bring in your arsenal, come and play whatever you want. I'm like, sounds perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is Afro-Cuban rhythms and stuff, but I mean, I brought in so much stuff and played so many things. So basically what they do is they put together what's called a packet. And it's called Afro-Cuban Percussion, I think, with Elizabeth Pupo-Walker. And so people at home are recording music. They're getting on GarageBand or they're whatever, all these different sites, or they're recording live in their room. But they've decided, you know what, I don't want that canned percussion sound that I'm getting on GarageBand. I'm going to make this music here, and I need some live congas. So they go and they find these sounds on Splice. So maybe someone's making an Afrobeat record, so they search Afrobeat and they find Afrobeat guitar. Luke O'Malley
it's like a sample
guitar.
It's like, oh my God, I bet that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a sample library for people to like choose ingredients and put together in their production.
And they can loop it. I think I haven't listened to it all, but I played some like four bar patterns, like it's not like you have to have this one little tiny loop going the whole time. So there's so much to choose from.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a cool company.
So you just what was that session like? You just showed up and brought all your toys and played, and did they give you suggestions, or they ask you for
They did ask me for some suggestions. Some stuff I did by myself. Some stuff was pre-recorded, like people that had come and laid down drum tracks and keys and things, and I would play along with that. Sometimes they ask me for certain things, like one shot type things, because a lot of times people just want a rim shot, or they want just one vibra slap sound,
Right.
So yeah, and then they were filming, obviously. That guy was cool. He was so stealth, like I didn't even really notice him. But and they're just they just you get compensated on how it sells, and you negotiate your percentage, what you think you're what you want from it, and I'm like extremely happy
Oh, so that's
the way it's
interesting.
selling.
So it's not like a set fee. There's a fee for doing the session, and then you actually get like kind of like royalties, like however many thousand.
Forever.
Yeah.
Forever. Every 2 months.
Every time a vibra-slap goes off in the forest somewhere, you get a like $10 bill lands in your lap.
I just did a recording session recently where the person who had hired me, I was recommended. He didn't really know me, and then he was like, "Wait a minute, I just bought your vibra-slap sample the other day."
Wow,
so funny. He goes, "I listened to a bunch, and yours was my favorite."
Yours was my favorite. Yeah, I could just see you like. Do it again. Yeah. Let's do like a little sadder this time. All right, give me something like you just came from a really hot party. Like
that's right.
Have you ever been somewhere and like heard a drum beat and been like, that's me, like I made that, like that's from my sample pack? Or
it just came out a few months ago.
Cool.
So not yet. Now I'm quarantined.
Oh, no, it's true. Well, you know what? It's funny. I just saw, Moog, the synthesizer company, Moog. They just put their entire library of synth samples, like online for free because people can't get to stores. And so it's interesting how different music companies are kind of like trying to reach out to all kinds of people. And so like musicians are a resilient bunch. I know that there's, it's frustrating for some musicians because it's hard to play together because of the lag, the internet lag.
Oh, that's the worst part.
But there is like, and I'm glad I would have brought this up even if we weren't having quarantine, but I'm glad that there's this company that has like, you can literally put together a library of sounds from real musicians. And so like, I think working on composing, trading tracks back and forth is like something that's totally can be happening, if it's not.
I think there's going to be a lot of incredible creative energy during this time, and things that will, once we pull out of this, that we'll still continue to do even as we start performing in all these venues, and everybody's going to be so hungry for these live shows. But there's going to be a whole new world of online music that is going to advance and be really cool.
Cool. Awesome. Can you, I wanted to go back to that Kochema song you were telling me about. Let me see if I can find it here. This is Mitote, correct?
Yes, it is.
So I'm gonna let it play for a minute, and then, or do you want to tell me what the origin of this part, how you put this together, and what happened with this part?
This part? What do you mean this part?
Was this the one that you said you were writing?
Yeah, well, there's okay, so this song, it's going to start out building. There's going to be some arrhythmic stuff. Yeah, you can play it behind. And you hear all that business. And Sonny Jane gets on here and plays the dole.
Oh, Sonny Jane from Red Barat.
Yeah, he gets on this tune.
Sonny Jane is like the man with the handlebar mustache. He's totally the dude.
And he has a great new record out, Wild Wild East.
Wild Wild East.
Right, so that's Neil on congas. Now here I come. That's me on the bongos.
Here on the right.
Yeah, you hear how it's panned. Let's talk about left, right. Here we go. Now you hear how everything is locking, like everybody has a role. Everybody. And coming up, you're going to hear a drum break. And after that drum break, pause. And I'm going to talk about that break.
Okay.
There's Kochema.
He's playing alto through a wah-wah pedal?
Yeah. Yeah, he likes effects a lot.
Of course.
All right, here's the break.
I gotta listen to that one more time.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to focus on that is for students. I just want to share an experience that I think you may want to, learn from. Anyway, so we're building that song and arranging, and Jimmy has that great melody, and then Gabe comes in, the producer engineer, and he's like, you know what? I think we should have like a drum break that kind of repeats as a refrain in the song a few times. We need something really freaking good, like a really cool break. So I just immediately went, oh, I got one, which I didn't have a break. But I was just like, I want my break on the record.
Right.
I want my break.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
No offense to anyone else in the room, but I knew they were going to have cool breaks too, right? So I was like, I need to get in there fast.
Get in there.
So they were like, oh yeah, let's hear it. So I was just like, I played that. What you hear on the record.
That was it.
I played that. And then they were like, cool, man. Yeah. And then so we learned it and everybody learned it. But okay, so the point being, that worked out for me. But, it's okay if it doesn't. You have nothing to lose from saying, I gotta, just see what comes out. If it's not cool, they're gonna go, Right. And then somebody will be like, wait, let's try this.
It's very unlikely. It's very unlikely.
You can try again. It's like.
Again, it's very unlikely that someone's going to be like, no, and don't
and
ever raise your hand again, Pupo-Walker. Mete.
You need to go.
Who invited you anyway? Wow. And
so just go for it. Freaking go for it.
I like it. I want to play again. I mean, that could be my ringtone right there. That break could be my ringtone.
Let's make it a ringtone.
Can you call up Splice? Let's get that added.
Yeah, right.
Bonus pack. Hello. Yes. Thanks for calling.
Oh, God.
This is the point in the video cast where I say something that's not true. So for everyone, the people at Splice have recorded that ringtone and they're going to offer it as a free download. I'll put the link in the description below. None of that's true. That's not true. But if you want,
none of that's true.
None of that's true. But also there you go.
That's Jesse. And that's Victor on bell. There's Sonny. Sonny's about to take a dole solo. Listen to that deep tone and then the high snap. That's his Indian drum that he plays.
Cool call and response there.
Bring it down or whatever. So that we knew that he was going to call a couple of fours, couple of twos, whatever that sequence was. Yeah. But we didn't know what he was going to call. So that's all improvised. We had to respond to everything he did in the moment.
Got it. Oh, cool.
Yeah. We knew we were going to play halfway through his rollout measure. Yeah, we knew that.
I love it. Elizabeth Pupo-Walker, it has been so awesome talking to you. I feel like there's all these other things that we didn't even touch upon, so that'll have to be the next meeting.
So fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
So cool.
again, so many of the points you brought up, the idea of being patient, of being confident enough to assert yourself and to try to find solutions to your own questions. Um, the idea of continually breaking out to the next level, and that it's not a smooth climb, but that it's bit by bit by bit at every level of your career. And this is not just something that students have to struggle and then you get to the point where you know it and then you're good to go. The idea of supporting each other and feeling that frustration and feeling the grind and feeling that jealousy, and also recognizing that those are, while they're valid feelings, they're not something you need to carry around, and that creating community really to support. These are all things that, like, we all know, we've all seen them written down, but to hear you talk about them in and the examples that you've given is really, it's super helpful, and it spreads a lot of sheds a lot of light on the kind of music and spirit that you bring to all your music. So thank you so much for talking.
What a nice little recap.
Oh man. Recap. If people want to find you, if they want to find your recordings, if they want to get in touch with you for teaching or any of that kind of stuff, what's the best way to find you?
My website, I have my email on there if you go to the contact info.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram.
Okay.
And I'm just under my name, Elizabeth Pupo-Walker.
Okay.
No hyphen.
No hyphen.
And just, it's a public. My Instagram is public.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is there a crazy emergency happening outside your house? I hear lights and things.
An ambulance just went by. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's all I hear anymore. Is just
I'm telling you,
ambulances.
we're making people are falling down unconscious from the sound of the groove. Everybody's watching this and they're just
they're pulling up now.
Up.
There's people getting out with drums.
That'd be great if ambulances just got repurposed as like traveling drum mobiles.
Everybody comes climbing out. Emergency. All right.
Okay. Elizabeth Pupo-Walker, so nice to have you. Miss you.
Miss you too.
See you soon. And this is Musicworks session 304. I'm Jesse Neuman. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you all soon.
Bye.
Woohoo!